Alright, thanks everyone. Welcome to the Data Science Seminar Series at the University of San Francisco, sponsored by the Data Institute. The Data Institute is the umbrella organization for all things data science at the University of San Francisco. Our speaker today is Olga Boldarieva, a data scientist at Outschool who does everything related to data science and analytics, from creating business metrics and building dashboards to running experiments and building ML models. Before Outschool, she worked as a data science mentor at Pathrise, where she built a data science career track and helped hundreds of job seekers to advance their careers in data science. Overall, she has 14 plus years of experience in data science and 12 plus years of experience in teaching and mentoring. She has a background in economics and statistics and finished a PhD program in economics at MSU. Today's talk will be about how to position yourself in the data science field while searching for a job and doing interviews. We'll discuss strategies that most candidates either use wrong or don't use at all, such as networking, cold emailing, and mail merges. Finally, we'll cover how to overcome challenges related to being an international student who requires visa support from the hiring company. Can we please give our speaker a round of applause?
Thanks, guys. And everything he said is true. Like 20 years experience, I'm that old, so it happens. So before I start, I just want to have a read of the room. Like, what's the experience with job search? So can you please raise your hand if you already applied for jobs in tech, even if it wasn't data science, like software engineer, just have experience with application process. Can you just raise your hand? Okay, great. So, and have you had any interviews? And it, again, maybe it's related to data science or not, but actually, when someone was interviewing you, in either this year or before, just in general, right? Can you raise your hand, people who had interviews? Okay, great. So I will keep that in mind that there are some people who have experience, some people who don't. Right? And also the last part is can you raise your hand if you worked on your resume? If you already have an idea, maybe it's not perfect, but you kind of already started and you know how resume looks like. It's pretty much everyone, right? They have some idea. Okay, we'll talk about resume a little bit, right? The talk is going to be structured 1 hour. I will give you my preaching, and then half an hour ask me any questions, right? So if you have something specific to you, can you look at my resume, stuff like that, totally fine. You can find me on LinkedIn. I can give you my email. I'm fine to review it. If it's some question overall, should I include this experience or not, feel free to ask it, right? So that everyone can hear. It might be relevant. Okay, so this is what we're going to talk about today. We will talk a little bit about profile. So I do know that Victor covered a lot, so I want to make sure that I cover something that he didn't talk about. But again, if you have any more questions, write them down at the end. We will make sure to answer that. We will talk about applying for jobs specifically, and I know quite a lot of you raised your hands, so I was really glad to see that. But I'm sure I will teach you something new that probably you didn't know about how you can apply for jobs. So that's my goal. So I will talk about a little bit less about the most trivial things, but a little bit more about something that most people even don't realize might be a good idea to do. I will cover a little bit of interviewing. I know some of you raise your hand you have been interviewing, and probably you've done that for your internship. Again, if you have more questions, happy to answer. So pretty much every bullet point of this agenda might be its own workshop. In my previous job, Victor mentioned, I was mentoring data scientists and analysts, and each of these bullet points was a separate workshop. So it's totally fine if you didn't get everything from this workshop, right? If there is a lot of interest, so many people want to know more about interviews, how to pass interviews or stuff, we can talk and I can come back and give specifically for that. Also keep that in mind. I'm really generous with my time. I really helping people. And Victor mentioned, I'm really especially having international students because I suffer a lot. I'm from Ukraine, and when I finished my PhD in economics, back then it wasn't considered STEM, so I had just 1 year of visa. So I've seen it all. I've been kicked out of the country. I've been denied offers that were already there on the table just because of the visa. So I kind of know your pain, and happy to talk about that as well. Great, and one small thing that we'll cover as well is getting an offer. But I know you're not there yet, but I will just point something that you should avoid at the beginning of the interview process, so you basically set yourself up for the best offer possible. So a little bit about me, in addition to what just Victor said, I'm right now working as a data scientist at Outschool. It's a edtech startup. It's live online classes for kids. It's a lot of fun working there. We grew a lot during COVID. I've been there more than 3 years. My job changed a lot, and that's what I'm going to talk with you guys. When you apply for a job, don't take it really seriously what they write in the job description, right? Especially if it's fast, paced company, like a startup that grows a lot, right? Like that may change a lot, 2 months in the job. So definitely pay attention about the culture, your manager, what is the team, right? All these things should also be something that you where you want to be, right? Because I think that's a big mistake when people just oh, this is a job description, I don't like it, or I really like it, that's my dream job. But once you enter the job, things can change a lot. Even in a big company, when I was at eBay, the focus of our team direction changed 3 times, within 1 year. So don't believe too much of what they say, right? Just talk more about what they actually do. So yeah, I've been in Outschool. I did my PhD in economics. So my background is in economics, statistics, that sort of thing. So I've always been analyzing data. So that's why I kind of had to position myself as a data scientist. It wasn't obvious, especially back then when I was searching for my first job. Here in the United States, there was this perception that all data scientists, they're software engineers, they really good with coding. And people had no idea the economists know how to code too. I had to explain, we actually know things, know statistics. I think right now it's much easier, so there is way more diverse background of people in data science, so it's to your advantage, no matter where you're coming from, or what background, I think you don't need to explain yourself these days, which is great. Yeah, and I work with Datalog and placed a lot of people in different roles. And in general, someone constantly reach out to me, hey, can you look at my resume, can I do this? So that's just something I enjoy doing, seeing how people can succeed. Oops, okay, so first let's start with the stages. Because you need to understand that job search consists of different stages, and passing each of the stages is a separate process. So you have the goals of moving forward through the stages. And the first one that I think a lot of people underestimate that that's a stage and that takes time. It's actually building your profile, or in Ukrainian I can say soul searching, the Dostoevsky kind of stuff, which is in the big picture is kind of why you're here, right? What's your unique mission, and what kind of job can help you contribute to that mission. So that may be I like helping people, or I like solve challenging problems, right? I really enjoy creating new stuff. It doesn't have to, your mission is not your job, but you need to understand what you enjoy doing. What's unique about you that no one else can bring to this world? And there's always something, right? Even if you say well, I don't really no one, or I know nothing. There's always some unique combination of your experience, skills, passion that you wanna pursue. So think about the job that will help you actually fulfill your mission. So I, for instance, really like helping people. I like a challenging task. I also like seeing an impact, right? So I tried different careers like academia, teaching, public policy, and I realized that there is always something missing, and startup environments actually where I thrive, because there is a lot of talking and helping. There is a lot of learning new stuff, and at the same time it's technical enough. I don't just talk, I actually do the work. So figure out what you like doing, and that will help you kind of position yourself in data science. Because I will show you examples for different job posting that are really different kind of data scientists. There are ones who are more on technical side, nothing wrong with that. If you just like coding and you don't like people, nothing wrong with that, okay? So you can just sit and stare on your computer and just show your result from time to time to people, and they will give you some feedback and you back to your computer. That's one type of jobs. Another one is interacting with people a lot, so it's literally maybe half of your time just asking stakeholders what do you guys need, where can I help, where you're struggling, and then translating that into data terms, solving it somehow, and then bringing the solution. And there may be something in between where you some project you do by yourself, some project you really interact with a lot of people. So think about that, because when you read the job description, you will see this is what I really want, right? even if it's not ideal, you still can apply, but then when it comes to preparing for interviews, like how much effort you put into getting this interview, you will know that it's not actually what I like really want to do, so I'm fine if they like don't like, call me back or something. And the last one, so that will help you work on your resume when you understand what type of profile you're putting out in the world. And also, I always suggest before you start your job search, try to come up with like 3-5 criteria that are important to you in your future job. And there is no right or wrong thing. Like many people always include compensation. It's totally fair. For international students, might be visa support. But also think about like culture, like what makes you happy, like what kind of culture, what kind of team. It may be like the industry, like do they do something good, like would I use this product, right? Can I relate to like what they do? Like I just really recommend having this criteria before you start, because then you will apply so massively, but you will know which jobs kind of like what you really want based on this criteria, right? Because there might be just job, like eventually you want to have an idea of like 3 tiers of jobs. One jobs that like you really, really want to have. These are like the best jobs. It's not a good idea to have just one job like that, or I only want to work with Google, right? No, but if you know that like, okay, it's a big company, it's like environment with like a lot of smart people, like you can learn from them, great. Then have the second tier. Okay, what if I can't get my first best option soon enough? What would be like second best for me? Well, maybe like mid-sized company, maybe like fast-growing startup, maybe something where I like have opportunity to grow, but I know it's not like the best, right? And also have this third tier. I hope you will not get there, right? But it's still maybe better than having no job, right? So if the job is so awful that you're like, I would rather just work in McDonald's and like do this stuff, right? Don't put it on your tier 3, right? But if you're like, well, as a starter, probably it's good enough, right? Have that like tier 3 as well, so that you kind of like diversify your risk, right? Because at the end you want to have like a job offer in like reasonable amount of time, and that really helps. Okay, so the second process is like applying in general, and I highly recommend when you apply, don't just look at the input, look at the output. I know like, Victor like mentioned like 100 applications like over this time period, and it's great. This is how you monitor like what you're doing. But I notice many people, they just focus like, oh, but I've been applying like 100 jobs a week and I got nowhere. I'm like, yeah, but how many interviews, right, you got from, for instance, your first 100 applications? So consider this, especially your data scientists, right? You kind of like learning. So this is like reinforcement learning. You send your first batch, say of like 100 applications, and then like you expect to hear back from at least like few companies, right? If you're doing things right. So I would say the average response rate used to be like 5 to 10%, maybe a little bit lower right now because of like, just like AI and like people apply more massively, but still out of 100 applications, even like hearing no, right? If you don't hear at all, that's suspicious, right? So if you apply with the first batch of 100 applications and you didn't get any response, think what you can do differently. Maybe you picked the jobs wrong. Maybe your resume is not optimal. Like pause and reflect and adjust, okay? I really like the one to see, and that's like what's really common when people keep doing something that doesn't give any positive result. And then they're like, oh my God, and then at the end, they feel so exhausted. I like sent one solid application, I got no interviews. Like you should have like asked yourself, what are you doing like way earlier than like after like 1 solid, right? And also the problem is like applying too much without reflecting. For instance, you have not optimal resume, right? And the ATS doesn't pick it out. Suppose you change it, but all these companies that you already applied to with your not perfect resume, they gone, right? Because you marked as no, and you will reapply and you will say, hey, but my resume is really good right now. But they will say, hey, but we already rejected you, right? So we're not going to spend time even reviewing. So keep that in mind, okay? And we'll talk about interviewing separately because especially for you guys, it's important to understand that like the biggest challenge is probably to get an interview. Like from my experience working with fresh grads and people with a little bit like of like work experience, usually people with experience have less problems getting interview, but have more problems passing it because it's been a while since you took all these courses and you still will be asked like, tell me what's p-value, like how logistic regression works, and you're like, oh, like what was the last time like I looked up the the definition? For you, it's going to be much easier because you just have these classes, you're ready, you're prepared. But for you, what's going to get harder is like actually like get this interviews, like basically like to have the chance to showcase yourself. So keep that in mind that like the first process is get interviews, and the second pass it. Once you enter the interviewing process, your chances of getting offer like pretty high, right? They already like you, they want you, so it's if you have multiple companies interviewing with you, say like 3 to 5, chances are at least one of them will give you an offer, right? Unless you like screw things up like really tremendously, but I don't think it's going to happen. So keep that in mind. Once you're in, like you really you have good chances, right? Like to get an offer. And we'll talk a little bit about negotiation. I just like want to make sure that you guys, don't just like accept whatever they give you, because this company tries to take advantage of you, and especially like the people with no experience or who like so desperately want a job. So just want to make sure that you ask for like fake compensation and like, basically stand out for yourself. Because I didn't do that. So please do that. Like I just was so happy they paid me anything. I was like, oh my God, my parents didn't make so much money their whole life, like because they offered me 1 year. But I was like not happy once I realized everyone else negotiated it. So now I'm like really trying to everyone else like not to repeat my mistake. Cool, so let's dive into stage 1, building the profile. So let's start with like really simple things. You need to ask yourself what I enjoy doing, right? Like where I want to work. Because work as a data scientist will be really different if it's a big company or a small company or mid-size. Depends which industry they're in, is this industry growing a lot or it seems kind of like stable, right? If you go to places like, I don't know, Intuit, Adobe, like they're like more like conservative. Like if you go to like places that's like really dynamic, I don't know, like Netflix, like things will be changing a lot. So yeah, the size of the company matters, the culture matters. So you can look up all these things on Glassdoor, ask your network. It's pretty easy to find, like to read about the company, like what's going on. And again, ask yourself, like, do I enjoy interacting with people or like work with data? And if you before didn't have any experience and you're like, well, I don't know if I enjoy interacting with people in work, basis, but just think like when you do the project here at school, do you like when it's like project with other people or you like doing it by yourself? Right? Just kind of like yes, like what kind of personality you have. Right? It may change like with age, who knows, but more likely you know yourself, or you can ask people around, hey, do you think like I'm like enjoy talking to people? Do you think like I'm the one who would be good in explaining stuff? And just hear what they say. It's something that's really like revealing like what people say about you. So collect that information before starting a job search. I think many people don't do enough. They're just so desperate to get a job and they just start sending their resumes without actually understanding what they want. So I really encourage you to do that because you will have way better like success when you apply for jobs. It's good for you, and also you'll be just more successful once you get this job, right? Because you will enjoy it. So yeah, like find out about culture, about companies. I would also add that because you are here in the like heart of right of this like startup culture and everything. There are so many meetups, so many events. I know you guys busy, obviously. That's important, but keep in mind you like have a huge advantage. Like when I was finishing my PhD, I was like in the middle of nowhere in Michigan, surrounded by deers and raccoons. There was no one, to like ask like, hey, what's data science, right? I was finishing my PhD in economics, and it took me a while, like just to understand, can I like call myself data scientist? Like what other courses I need to take to be able to do so? Here, you basically just walk out the street and like every second person will be like working in tech, so you can just like stop reading a stranger and just ask them. So take advantage. It's really cool here being like in this environment. Okay, and common mistakes. What you shouldn't do. I think I said it, but I will just repeat it. Set your goal right. Like I know you're already desperate getting a job, right? You've been studying a lot. You really want to get paid. You really want to like you contribute some impact and actually like apply the knowledge. So really often at this stage, people think that their goal is to get a job. And I think that it's way better to think that I want to get a job where I want to be in, right? Where I would want to work, where I will be successful, where I feel like I'm doing what I'm like supposed to be doing. Or, within some time, I will get there. So please have that in mind, right? It's not just getting any job. So I would say for you, successful job search, probably going to be like getting 2 or 3 offers. So you may consider that like I did my job search really well if you have 2 or 3 offers. it may not happen, but please aim for that. Like we'll talk a little bit later how to make it happen. So it's just better to have options, right? It's always like, especially if you have just one offer, you will be like, well, I have nothing else, right? So you'll probably accept lower wage and stuff, but it's really empowering when you see that companies want you and you feel really good about yourself. And also, let's face the reality of like tech, right? You probably like will switch jobs like a lot, right? Sometimes it may not even your decision. And there may be nothing wrong with you. It just happens in tech a lot when, you know, like things really good, companies growing, things not good, like half people like get laid off, right? And it's not your fault. So that's why when you do the job search, don't just think, oh my God, I have to do this to get a job. Come up with the approach that I need to learn how to get jobs so that I don't feel stuck in this company where I'm going to be at, right? And I feel like, you know, if there are better opportunities for me, or if I don't like something in these companies, I will go and explore, right? It's not like a relationship, you're not cheating on the company when you talk. Like, I constantly talk to other companies just to know what's happening. Sometimes it's just a great way to know like what they're doing. Right? Just pretend you want to work there and they will tell you. It's totally fine, you know, so adopt this mentality that you want to not just get a job, you also want to learn how to get a job. That will really empower you and like just make you like a happier person and just person who like, you know like what they want, what they worth, and like make choices like accordingly, right? Not just feeling stuck. It especially happens a lot if, for instance, you had an internship, you're like, yeah, I kind of like it, right? And then they gave you an offer and you stayed there. And then a few years later, you're like, I kind of don't like it anymore, but I have no idea how to get a job, right? And you feel like, oh, it's awkward, right? So yeah, even if right now, like you're an internship and they give you an offer and you feel like I'm fine with this offer, I still recommend like go and like talk to other companies, right? So in the best case scenario, you will still accept the offer. Maybe you will bring like higher counter offer and saying, hey, this company actually offered me that much. Can you guys like, you know, give me accordingly? Or at least you will know what's out there, right? So you may decide still to stay with this company, but you will make this choice way more consciously than if you're just like, oh great, they gave me an offer, now I can like have fun and then, you know, like throw the party, which you totally should do, right? But just like I was a labor economist back in Michigan State, right? Your first job is like, I don't want to scare you guys, but your first job is kind of like going to determine a lot in your career. Your wage expectation, like your worth, like what you're doing, and just good first job will like set you to success. You will be like, oh my God, I'm so amazing. Like it's just cool. But if you just happen to have not like best first job, which is may not be your fault at all, but you will kind of feel like, oh my God, I'm a loser. Like, you know, that's all I can do. And you will probably be asking less money. You will be less like just like confident in your job search process next time. So just pick the best you can, right? It may not be the best like out there, but just like try to put efforts to get the best you can. Okay, so you guys will probably have this slide, so I'm not going to go like too much. I just wanted to give you a little bit like examples how different job postings can look like. So every time you apply, don't just look at the titles. I know Victor spent a lot of time talking about titles, and it's obviously important how they call the job. But just keep in mind that the same title can mean really different things, and they actually reveal that. So I just like on LinkedIn put like data scientist, and like literally like first few postings, they were so different, and I just wanted to show you that. So this job posting is like pretty technical. It mentions a lot of AI, ML like requirements, algorithms. It mentions coding. It mentions machine learning engineering experience. It doesn't mention anything about communication with people or business intuition. So if you see a job posting like that, you immediately know what kind of person they need, right? They need someone who will be deep into like algorithms, who will be really fast, really efficient with coding, and you're probably not going to interact with people much. If that sounds like you, great, you know that, right? But if you're like, I don't really want to do that, you just need to know that this is probably not the job for you. Even if they can hire you somehow, you probably will not be like happy and successful. So here's another example, again, data scientist, but really different like description of what they want. So this one is a lot about business focus. So when you go through the responsibilities, you immediately see they talk about informing strategy and product, partnering with stakeholders, identifying opportunities. They don't mention anything specific about coding, don't mention any algorithms, they just say analyze complex data, blah, blah, blah. Well, what the hell that means? Like, maybe Excel, like who knows, right? So if they don't mention tools, specific tools, they probably don't care. They will just like throw the stuff at you and say like, hey, bring us a result, right? So they will be less like technical, but more about how can you help us with our business problem with your data skills. If that's something like you may want to do, especially if you have more like business background, that's great. But you just need to understand, not a whole lot of like machine learning is going to be here, right? That's like pretty obvious just from the job description, even if they say that they're looking for a data scientist. And many roles they kind of in between, like this one. So they talk about problems, opportunities, they talk about stakeholders, business acumen, but they also mention like specific statistics, ML requirement, they even mention NLP modeling. So I would guess that probably it's going to be 50-50, right? Sometimes you will work just like on like these technical problems, but really often you will work with stakeholders. So just every time you apply, look for these like keywords, look for like the description so that you know what to expect, right? And when you see what kind of persons they're looking for, it helps you also prepare for the interviews, right? If I were to go for the interview for this company, I would probably not brush up a lot of my technical skills, but I would really look into like how this company make money, what they're struggling with, like what their product looks like. I would really look like from the perspective of the business. And for the first role, I would definitely, go on lead code and stuff, and I would just like, hey, I really need to like they would probably do like make you like pretty similar to like software engineer kind of like, interviewing process with a lot of coding, with a lot of like technical questions. Okay, I can pause here in case someone has question about like what I like pressing questions and like really like burning, just to make sure like people are fine. If not, that's fine. We can get it at the end. Okay, nothing like personal. Okay, great. So when is the right time to apply for jobs? So you figure out what you want. You kind of have an idea what companies mean when they do their job posting. Well, you need to have a decent resume. Like Victor was saying, if your resume doesn't pass ATS or just human, right, like you will get rejected, probably no second chance. It doesn't have to be perfect. Don't spend too much time. I've seen people really like trying to perfect their resume, and I'm like, no, you should go out there and start applying. It's already good enough. Like, how do you know when it's good enough? We'll show it to at least like few people working in the industry already, right? Maybe past alumni from your program, maybe some other people that you know, so that they can kind of like scan for like, the most common like mistakes people do, like not talking about impact or like, bringing up irrelevant things. You gotta have less space like filled than just like bring up a lot of stuff that's not relevant. So yeah, just show your resume. If you have like career services here, like also utilize it. Just make it good enough so that like you feel like your chances like maximize when you apply. You need to have at least one technical project to talk about. So every data science, data analyst interview, like they will at some point ask you, like, tell me about your project, right? So you need to have one project that's either already completed or really close to completion. It might be from your courses that you took here. It's better to have like some practical application. So if you have something in your internship, that's going to be way better. But if you have nothing or nothing relevant to them, bringing up something from the coursework is fine as well. I just recommend picking a project where you come up with an idea, found the data set. It just really doesn't land well when you're like, professor gave us a data set, like what was your like contribution there? If you're in internship right now and you're working on some project, so I would say it's also fair game to bring it up, as long as you've already done something. If you just started and I have a project plan, it's like not enough to talk about it because they'll ask details, what problems like you had, like how you overcame these problems, like stuff like that. So you already need to do some work, but it's fine if it haven't been completed. I would say if it's like 60-70% completed, and you know where it's going, it's also fine. But make sure you have this project and make sure you practice how to talk about it. So you kind of want to, I don't know if you guys know the STAR technique, like have you guys heard about STAR technique, like situation, task, action, result? So that's how you want to talk about your project. Like this was the setup, this is the task like that I was giving, this is the action I took, and this is the impact I had. So that's pretty simple, but I highly recommend practicing it in advance because every single company will ask you. So you better like come prepared. You want to brush up your technical skills, I think you're good on that, and practice your communication. by that I mean just what really helped me, which sounds weird, but it really helped, like talking to strangers. And I was in Michigan, people are really polite over there. It's a little bit probably harder here. You're like, what do you need? Like, what's wrong, right? But the thing is, like, once you're in the interview setting, right, you usually have 30, 45 minutes. And it's really important to make a connection like right away so that you feel comfortable talking to the person, asking for clarifying questions. And it takes a little bit of time to get there. So, if you can like just like practice that or, like imitate that like with like your like friends or your like teammate, like, classmates, just like, hey, let's do mock interview, right? So that's also like count. So basically just, and try to believe not like the quality of your responses, but how at ease you feel. Because the interview setting is really like, it's not something we have day-to-day life. Like people question you, it's a little bit intimidating, right? Stakes are high, and it takes time just to get comfortable, right? So that's why I highly recommend like practice a little bit, like to reduce that like discomfort and like make sure that at least you do the best you can, right? So it doesn't throw you off that like you feel shy or intimidated by the voice or like, I don't know, the look of the interviewer. Just get used to like talking to a stranger, like in any way you can. That will help. So I have to just apply if you have at least 50-80% of skills. I think Victor mentioned that as well. You don't have to have everything, but have at least half. Like it's good to have preferences, but stay flexible. And another thing related to communication skills, apply first to companies that you kind of like, but that's not your first like choice, right? Like second-tier companies. Because as I just said, the interviewing is a skill, and you'll probably get better after a few interviews. And it will like really suck if you apply to your dream job first, they will invite you, and you'll be so awkward and so like uncomfortable that they will reject you. But then later, you kind of like will get better, and you're like, man, I like really screwed this, So this is a big mistake that I've seen people doing. They just apply to the like top companies first before they actually acquire the skill of interviewing, right? Because there is one thing of answering technical questions, but then there's just another thing of feeling comfortable, like being able to ask clarifying questions and stuff like that. So the first batch, right, like for the first like maybe couple of batches with like 100 applications each, apply to companies good enough, right, but not like your dream companies. So that when you have interviews, you can practice, stakes are lower, you feel more relaxed, you kind of like learn how to do that, and then you feel like, okay, now I'm ready. You go Google, right, or whatever like your dream job is. So please like keep that in mind, that the quality of your interviewing skills will like increase, right, pretty soon, right? So your first interview is not going to be your best interview, trust me. Like, it's kind of destined to fail, which is fine, right? That's how we learn. You still can pass, people understand that, but you will do much better later. Yeah, and as I told you, like, whatever tool you use, like Hunter or any other tool, document there like your response rate, not just how many applications you had, but what was the response, right? Like from how many companies I heard back, how many companies like said yes, no, and like trying to improve that, trying to improve your response rate in general, and trying to improve your like pass rate. So basically, percentage of companies that like give you green light and like invite you for the interviews. Okay, so there is this thing that like probably many people don't understand that it exists, but this is like really important to applying for jobs. So one thing is like really straightforward. You just search for positions, right? You go on LinkedIn, Google Job, Glassdoor, whatever, and you just apply. But here's another thing, like you may find a job by like looking for companies. And that's something that's like less obvious, and I've been doing a lot with people I like coached. Especially if you have some like pretty clear preferences. So what you can do, instead of searching for like who is hiring, what are the positions available, you may just see what are the companies available, right? So basically taking a little bit more confidence in yourself and saying like, this is the companies I want to work at. So the way to find the companies, you may do it on LinkedIn. There is a really great database called Crunchbase. I don't know if you guys have access to the university, but overall, like you all can like buy just one access and like use it. Like in my previous company, like hundreds of people like just were using the same password, and like, it works. So basically, the database, they have like all the companies here in the United States, like all of it, and they have really great filters. So you can like, okay, I want companies, for instance, like an EdTech, this size, this round, if it's like a startup, so they have some money, for instance, like CP, like round B, like round C, you know, they have some money, but like they still growing. You can like where their headquarters is, like you can basically filter on so many things. And in the end, it will give you a list of companies that like satisfy your criteria. And then what you can do, first thing, you can go on their website and see if they're hiring or not. Because the thing is, LinkedIn is expensive, right? So if it's like mid-sized company, especially if you know they have limited budget on like hiring, they may not even have money to put their jobs on LinkedIn, right? So they may still be hiring it maybe on their website, but not on these like platforms. This is the first thing. The second thing, sometimes company hiring what's called like internally, but they don't post this like externally. And that happened to some of the people I coach when they reached out and then said like, hey, that's like, I'm Olga, this is my resume, blah, blah, blah. And like, I'm interested in working in your company, like, do you want to talk? Like, do you guys have anything? And sometimes they will say, yeah, let's chat. The thing is they may already have like some idea of like they want to hire someone. Or there is this concept called like proactive hire. So like imagine like I have a team of data scientists, I really want to run more, maybe like junior data scientists, but I don't have time. Like hiring is really time consuming. It's a person who spends a lot of like hours and like all these interviews and panels. No one likes it, right? So when you open the hiring, it's a lot of time for many people. So many companies, they need someone, they're just too lazy, you know, to like start hiring for someone because screening, interview, that's all takes time. But if someone reach out saying, hey, like, do you want to chat? Like, I'm here, that's my resume, I want to work for you, especially if you provide some like compelling reason. I want to work at EdTech, that's my dream. And you're like, great, well, this person here wants to work here. We may need someone, like, if they talk to you, if you're like good enough, legit, like, they can hire you. Like, I placed few people like that. You know, when just reach out to companies that didn't have openings on their website, they ended up talking to them and getting an offer. Keep that in mind, right? So the response rate might be like lower when obviously you apply for open position, but think that like you will not be competing with hundreds of other people, right? You will be proactive and potentially applying, like reaching out to companies that you really like. There is something about the company that resonates with you and they will like see that, so they're way more likely to hire you. So in addition to like searching for positions, think about what are the companies, right? And like how to find these companies and then try to reach out. So this is like something that I think really underestimated and works really well. And the next question is like, okay, I found these companies, they're amazing, like how do I reach out to them? There are these two techniques that like work really well. One's probably more common, it's like called cold email. So basically when you send email to someone you don't know. Right, so I will show you example of like my email and like walk you through like what are the steps of like cold emails that you need to study. Like what are the main criteria for the cold emails like that you may consider it's a good cold email? Like we were like chatting with Victor about this over email. I think a lot of people you might hear from them like, oh, cold emails they don't work. You know, I've been really trying, they don't work. And like my answer is like you haven't done it right. So when people come to me and say cold emails don't work, I ask them, show me a cold email. And I'm like, ooh, no wonder that cold email didn't work, right? Because it's really important like what you send them, right? It should be like concise, it should be personable, it should be with a clear ask and not formal. Like, you know, like there are some like criteria, there are some rules that if you do it right, you have way higher chances of hearing back. So it's not about cold emails good or bad, it's just if you do it right or not. So it's like really depends how you do them. There is this another technique, mail merges. I will mention briefly right now. If you guys have more questions, like ask me like later in the Q&A section. It's kind of a separate animal, but it's like really powerful. It's like we borrowed it in my previous company from, you know, sales. So basically mail merge, it's a technique, like imagine you have like Excel file with like emails of companies, the names of the companies, and for instance, the emissions. You can easily do that on Crunchbase. You can like filter companies and then just like download a like Excel file with this information in each column. Then what you do, you write a template. There should be something similar about this company so that the template works for all of them. And you're like, hey, Google, right? Like, I'm really inspired by your mission, blah, 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 right? And you may add something else like related to these companies, and you just send it in a big batch. For instance, like 50 emails at once. Like the difference between cold emails and mail merge, basically mail merge, it's like templated cold email. Because when we say cold email, we mostly mean that you like write it specifically to this company. You might reuse the same like cold email, but still you like write it one by one. Mail merge is a way just to like send a lot of cold emails at once. And then guess what? Out of 100 emails like this, like maybe a couple companies will respond. But you did it in one click. You didn't have to like, copy paste like 100 emails. So there are tools, if you just Google mail merge, like you will find a lot of tools where you can use it. So as long as you have this list of like emails like where you want to send, and like they're like this part that you want to like substitute. So basically you put a placeholder and it will like plug in whatever you need, the name of the company, the mission. It works really, really well, especially if you like don't have really strict preferences, you kind of have an idea where you want to work and you just keep sending it. Like finally, there is another way if you really, really want to work somewhere, right? That you're like, man, this is like my dream job. I really want to be there. There is also like the way to get there is like make connections with someone with the company from the team, right? So networking. I would just like try to be like when you try to make this connection, not just like reach out to people, hey, I need the referral or I need the job, right? It's a little bit intimidating, especially if you don't know that person, right? But like try to just, hey, I'm so excited. Like for instance, like I just want to learn more. Like say like suppose I want to work at Coursera and I'm like see someone working there. I'm like, hey, I see we have similar background. It's like I'm really inspired by what you guys doing. Can we just chat? It's not necessarily that everyone will say yes, but many people will if they see genuine interest and not just like give me a job, give me a referral. Right? And then like when talking like, hey, like do you guys like hiring? Do you expect to like start hiring? Because usually we kind of know right now, even if we're not hiring yet, but we kind of know, okay, in summer we're probably going to have a couple of job openings. And I can tell you, yeah, like we probably will, So for your top priority companies, consider that as well. It's definitely not the approach for every company, right? You will just waste your time. I've seen people doing this mistake when they spend all the efforts on trying like to network and get to like know people. It's impossible to do this kind of people, and it's impossible to be genuine. If you reach out to so many people, you kind of see how people treat you as like, just like yet another like way to get in. But if you really care, say about like 5 companies, I think it's totally like fair game just to try to get to know someone from this company to understand better. And if you happen to get invited for the interviews, again, you may use this person like just to like help you understand what the context of the company, what they're working on, so that you come like really prepared. Okay, so the common mistakes, what you shouldn't do. Apply too early when resume is bad, when you're not ready to interview. Because imagine you're applying, next day they will get back to you and say like, hey, so amazing, like we want to like talk to you, and you're like, wow, that's fast, right? And like, how do I prepare? So have an idea, what technical interview looks like, what like product manager interview looks like, behavioral, before you even start applying. Again, you don't have to be perfect, but you should have an idea of like how it works, so that if they say yes, we want to talk to you tomorrow, you don't feel freaked out and you're like not going to like do it just because you didn't know it's going to happen. Yeah, and I said that don't apply to high-stake companies too early, definitely wait. And support your applications with cold emails if it's like your first-year companies, right? If you don't want to like send personalized email, use mail merges, but do support because cold emails doesn't guarantee that it will give you an interview, but really high chances if you send your cold email, someone human will look at your resume. So if for instance ATS like blocked it, and if you send cold email right after you apply, they will look at it and say, well, let's give this person a chance, right? So that's your chance basically to, for like second opinion on your profile. And again, please reach out to companies even if they don't have open roles, right? They don't have open roles right now, they may have in the future, or they may like you as much as like a lot, and then they will like hire you. And I would probably add here, just based on my own experience, also like, if you see the role, but it's kind of like not for you, but you really like the company. So I had this like, my current company, Outschool, they had the role when I was searching, but it was like data analyst, really junior, and I already had a lot of experience, so I was a data scientist. But I still reach out and say, hey, I really want to work there, like I want to contribute, and we chatted. And basically they kind of opened another role for me. So they still hired data analysts, but they also hired me because like, we kind of mutually like each other. So keep that in mind that if company especially growing a lot, even if the role they have right now not perfect fit for you, still talk to them and be like transparent. Say like, hey, I really like. I don't think this role is actually for me. Like, can we guys figure it out? And when the company is growing, they need a lot of people anyway. And because you're already there, that may happen. So this is my cold email. So you will see the guys in presentation. So a few things like to point here. First, it's really short. And a big problem with cold emails that I've seen, people start writing their whole life story. I was born in Ukraine, my childhood was rough. When I was 5 years old, my parents got divorced. You don't want that level of details, but you still want something personal so that people see human being just behind this cold email. There should be some clear ask, right? So I'm just saying hey, this is my dream job, I want to work here. How about you hire me? So it's really often people write, I like your company, blah, 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 and then they just finish with nothing. You still need to say, if they have opening, you say, I want an interview. If they don't, let's chat, maybe I can help you somehow with my skills. Just include a clear ask of what you want. It should be compelling, right? It's another mistake. Really often if you just Google cold emails, you probably will see a lot of templates. And these templates will be hi, my name is Olga, I'm a data scientist, I'm reaching out because you have this opening, I'm looking forward to chatting with you fast, right? So these emails will be exactly the same for everyone, right? You want to show your personality, you want to stand out. So make sure that it's show your passion for the role, for the company, why you want to be there, right? And I, again, highly suggest sending cold emails to companies you want to work for. If there is nothing that excites you about the company, you may say, I know your team is really good, the data science team, I always wanted to work there, right? There still should be something, or the product, I really like your product, I myself use this app, or I use Uber every day to school, it's so amazing, so I want to be part of it. So just say something compelling about the team, the culture, or Salesforce, who the hell knows what they do, right? But they have good culture, right? No, I do know, but probably not, it's B2B, right? But everyone knows they have such amazing culture, and you may say, hey, I want to be part of this amazing team with this culture. Yeah, and be friendly and personal, right? It's still professional, but your cold email is basically your way of showing who you are. So the good thing is if you send compelling cold email, you can hear back sooner. And also what I've seen for myself and for many people I coached, the treatment will be different because everyone will be so your cold email most likely will be attached to your application. So all the interviewers who will interview you, whatever tool they use, but there's always you read through, you read the resume of a person, maybe notes from other interviewers, and if you happen to send cold emails, that's going to be attached as well. So, if you have a cool cold email, you'll make a lot of people kind of smile or just like you more, even before talking to you, which is amazing, right? The more they like you, the better your chances that, they will be nice. Okay, so I think I'm good in cold email. So we got to the part where we will talk about interviewing. So we kind of expect that you already got a job, right, at this point, not a job, got an interview, right? So you made your resume good enough, right? So you started applying, you were reflecting on your response rate, you adjusted things, and then you supplemented your application with cold email, so maybe you did mail merges, right? So now you have interviews. Ideally, you want to have multiple interviewing processes in your pipeline. So how to prepare for the interviews? Make sure that you know how to answer it. Tell me about yourself. Everyone is going to be asking that, so have a really great answer. I suggest having two versions, one really short one for 1 minute and one a little bit longer where you can extrapolate. This is a course I took, but this is a project I did, and this is my internship. And one is just more concise. I'm a data scientist, background in economics, I specialize in causal inference, blah, blah, blah. So just really short abstract of what I did. You need to be able to talk about your project. We talked about that before. Many companies will ask you why you want to work in our company. You should have some answer, right? We talk, right? You don't want to say I need a job, man. I really need to pay my loan. So that's a really bad answer, right? So have something. There is definitely something that you may like, right? The product, the culture, the team, what they do, like just like have that in advance. Don't try to come up on the spot. Just when you like go through the interview process, like think in advance, like what I would like in this company. Because when they hire you, they want to make sure that you stay for long enough. Because like to give you an idea, especially if you're like relatively new in your career, so for a company, kind of like so that it pays off to hire you, you need to stay at least 1 year. You're probably not going to bring much value and much money in your first few months, right? So no one wants you to hire for like less than 1 year because the expectation is by the end of your first year, for instance, they hire you for like, I don't know, 120K. So my expectation as a hiring manager, by the end of your first year, you will like bring my company at least 120K, right? So that's why I want you to stay as a company. So I need a reason like why you want to be here. And if you give me the reason, just like, well, the pay is nice, and I'm like, okay, maybe there's another company coming in that like offers you more, and you will just leave us, right? We don't want that. So that my company won't invest in you only if they see that you will stay. Some interviewers, which many people find intimidating, I'm like from Ukraine, it's really hard to intimidate me, but they will actually ask you, they will ask you, so why should we hire you? Why not this another dude or like someone else? And it's a legitimate question, right? Like they have multiple candidates. Like it may seem like a little bit rude, but I actually got these questions, right? And you need to have an answer, right? So like my answer was that like, well, I have this like background in economics, but I'm also technical. I know what I'm doing, so I'm kind of good with algorithms, but also understand like their limitations, how to apply them. Whatever your answer is, like you should have one, right? What's specific about your skills, your passion, your experience that like show them that yeah, you're a strong candidate, right? Like maybe you'll never get the question, but you always should have an answer, right? Basically, like why you, why not someone else? This is the thing that many people, even with a lot of experience interviewing and really like, senior who's like been in many different jobs, they didn't know that actually you can ask before the interview what to expect. I think there is this like perception of the interview that it's an exam. And many people, they think, well, you don't ask professor, right, what's going to be an exam, like unless you like give them a bribe and like, hey, like what's going to be an exam, right? Interview is different. They really want you to succeed. So like I want you to adopt the mentality that they're not gatekeepers. It's not like they have a job and like you want it and they're like, no, prove yourself, right? So they really want you as well because there is like some work that needs to be done. They don't want to spend all this time in interviews, but they just want to make sure that you can do the job, right? So that's why if they know they're going to ask you about like this kind of algorithms or like that type of like statistic concept, they can tell you, right? So when I was interviewing with Uber, I asked them like before my final round, like what should I expect? How should I prepare? Interviewers always have like their what's called hiring plan, like the recruiter has hiring plan, and they know what each interviewer is going to ask, what kind of questions. And it's not cheating, that's totally fair game. They will probably not give it to you unless you ask. But if you ask, and they later told me, well, this interview is going to be about time series, this interview is going to be about dynamic pricing, this interview is going to be about like your like managerial experience. So, and I knew how to prepare. If I didn't ask, I would never get the information. So just make sure that before every interview, when they schedule an interview, you say to the recruiter like, hey, thanks, like how do I need to prepare? What should I know? They can tell you, oh, nothing, just come, like there's nothing for you to know. That's fine, but you should try. Right? I would say in half of the cases, they will give you some information that probably other candidates don't have. So that's your way to prepare better. Because like when you go through the interviews, right, you may think like, oh, I just want to be like, like do my best, but always think how you can be better than other candidates, right? Because you're competing with like a few other people, and like just try to do your best to like do something that they probably don't do. Asking what's going to be in the interview in advance. Many people will not do that, right? Or if they ask you in the interview some question and you give answer, and then like ask yourself like how other people could have answered. And if you feel like that was really trivial answer, try to like top it up, try to add something else, some creative spin, like maybe some other algorithms that like less people know about. Basically just try to like show off, like show something that other people may not have. Because your goal is just like, be like slightly better than everyone else so that you're going to get a job, not them. And Another big mistake, right, is people come and, for instance, they tell me like, oh, it's going to be interview with like a hiring manager, and like I'm prepared to talk about data science, but also like what's really good is to see like how this company make money, what are their major pain points right now, do they try to grow, acquire a lot of new users, or do they want to pivot, or are they really improving their product right now? So when you come with this perception, you will look way more senior if you just come and, hey, I'm here to do my data science, right? I don't care how you guys make money, I will just run my algorithms. So this is like really junior-like perception. You will look way more senior if you like will say, hey, but you are marketplace, right? You need to connect demand and supply. That sounds way more like, okay, this person know what they're talking about, they did their homework, although it's like really trivial thing to say. So every time you come to the interview, especially if you like the company, even if you're like really into data science, just like look at their business model, like how this company makes money. Do they like work with customers, they B2C, or they B2B, or maybe they have both, right? So that will help you understand like what kind of problems they deal with. Do they have their own product, or they just like matchmaker, like a marketplace between different sites? So try to understand that, and then like you will definitely stand out. And always prepare questions, right? You will almost always have some time at the end of the interview for the questions. Like make sure you ask something that you care about, but also that shows again that you did your homework. Like you will talk about the company, maybe about the team, because you're also being evaluated in your questions. Yeah, that's a chance for you to ask what you want, but the interviewer will put in the notes. Oh, and I really like the question. Like the candidate really did their homework because they they knew this and that about the company. Okay, and the last thing is like when the interview is happening, right? So I noticed, like I did a lot of mock interviews in my previous job, and I noticed that really often people, they don't understand the question, but then they will start like, okay, I don't understand what she was asking, I think it was that, and they just start giving the response, right? It's totally fine to say, hey, like let me repeat the question to make sure I understand, right? You should do that because no one is going to punish you for that. It's going to be much worse if you just start answering the wrong question. Because if I'm hiring manager, I'm like, well, this person clearly doesn't listen to what I'm saying. Like, I don't want to hire someone who will not be listening and not paying attention. But it's definitely fine to say, like, hey, like, can you like repeat it? I want to make sure I got it right. If, for instance, you ask question and you don't know, they're like, hey, have you ever worked with like NLP models? Like, can you explain like, or we see this like project on your resume, but like, can you like dig deeper? And you're like, ooh, I don't know, right? And many people, that's also unfortunate, they start coming out with something. It's like really bad idea. It's a really red flag. If you don't know, it's absolutely fine to say, I don't know at that level. So I applied, I followed some guidance, but at that level, I don't know what the model was doing. It's totally fine. It's never going to be like against you because you're not supposed to know everything. You're just like, being honest. Also keep in mind that you can suggest an alternative. That's also something I don't think people realize. Again, it's not exam. The interviewer just want to know if you will be able to solve the problem when you have it. So that really happened to me when I was like having one of my first interviews. The interviewer asked like, oh, can you explain like how random forest works? And I'm like economist, like I don't know much like random forest. So I knew the concept, like branches and stuff, but I couldn't explain, all this like technical stuff. And I said, well, I don't work with random forest, but for like, binary classification problem, I would use logistic. They want to talk about logistic. And they said, yeah, that's fine. Like, let's talk about logistic. And that's what I knew really well, and I passed that interview. But if I got like intimidated, like, oh my God, random forest, I have no idea, I would probably just fail. So always think about like more general what they're asking, not specifically the algorithm, but what problems they're trying to solve with algorithms. And if you don't have like, if you don't have the knowledge about the like algorithm they're asking, suggest something else. And show your personality, like whoever you are, I think it's better for them to know it in advance. They also will remember you better, right? Like people are different, but I know I myself, when I was going through the first like round of interviews, I was like, oh my God, you have to be so serious, and I'm not a serious person at all, right? So, and then I was like, well, what if they don't like it? I would rather not work there. And I just started like, sliding some jokes here and there, and like it worked pretty well, but if it didn't, if they gave me like this look, I was like, that's a boring company, like I don't want to be there. So if there is something important for you, right, that people like interact like in a human like way, be that person too, and then they will see how to respond, right? If they give you a look and like, hey, we do business here, like, I don't know if you want to work there, right? Maybe they're great, but it's just like, you also go there like to enjoy yourself, right? So you're not a robot, like you don't want to just like do your job. Whoever you are, try to be yourself, whatever is important to you. Like for me, it's also was important that company is inclusive, that they find with like foreigners, females, all this sort of stuff. In my companies, we have a lot of people, like, you know, with really different backgrounds, like, we had a lot of diversity, and like, that's I think what like, was important for many people, and that's why they were open about it. So whatever is important to you, know that, outside of the job itself, just the company, and just search for that. You know, you will see the signal during the interview, how there or not. Okay, so just like to repeat what you shouldn't do. You should ask what to expect and how to prepare for interviews. If you don't do that, that's a big miss. You should research on the company. During the interviews, really often, interviewer will give you some hints. Try to pick up on that, right? They're on your side, they try to help you. So if you think that they're suggesting you something, like double check and say like, oh, do I hear it right? Actually, like make this assumption as well. Really often they want to help you out. And like one last thing that also happened like to some of the people I coach, they like, we talked like after the interview, for instance, next day, and they would be like, man, like the interview was just over, and then I came up with a better solution. The right thing to do is like send email right away, because you still have a chance kind of to improve like your feedback, like, you know, if you would follow up soon. If you don't have the email of the person you've been talking to, just send it to recruiter. Just say, for instance, even if you have interview during the day and in the evening you came up with something. Maybe you did your research, maybe you just, you know, some idea came to your head. Just like write to the recruiter saying like, hey, I had an interview with Olga earlier today, we talked about this business problem, and now I think I have a better solution, can you pass it to her? And just briefly describe what you came up with. That will always count, you know, you will increase your chances of like hearing back by doing that. Obviously, if nothing came up, like don't do that. But you know, if you had an idea, and I heard it too many times, that's why I'm like telling you, never hold back, right? Always reach out, because you still like, it's still your chance, right? Like to be evaluated for the entire like solution that you suggested. So definitely do that. In terms of just following up, you know, there was this like, I would say more old-fashioned, like after each interview, was so nice talking to you, blah, blah, blah. My take right now is someone who got a lot of these emails, unless you have something important to say, like, you know, don't. But again, if you want to just like think, for instance, interview was especially helpful, like answering your question, or you really like them, then send that email. It's not going to probably change the decision. They may still like say no to use a hire, but you know, that will be a nice gesture. But if it was interview, you know, nothing personal, I would say don't bother sending follow-up emails. You know, no one cares. Unless you want to fix some of your responses, unless you want to improve. Okay, so yeah, it's okay to follow up. I've seen people, you know, being shy. Like recruiters may forget about you, like things may happen. So you want to hear from them in like 3 to 5 business days. Always keep in mind that they may tell you how you can improve, no matter what the response was. I think it's also a big miss when people like, they either reject it or they move forward, but they never ask for the feedback. So for instance, you got rejected. That sucks, right? You didn't want that, but you still can ask, hey, like, you know, I keep interviewing with other companies, how I can improve, like what was the feedback? And just from my experience, from what I've seen, recruiters usually, they don't like sending that over emails. I think there is some legal stuff, you can sue them because it's all subjective. But usually they're really fine talking over the phone. They're like, hey, can we get on the phone? And then they were like, well, you know, like, yeah, your response was great, but like, it actually was less technical than we expected, or the opposite. They may say, we expected more like business intuition, more leadership experience. So at least you will know, you will learn something. So don't think that like rejection is a complete failure. Like you learn during the interview process, you're getting better, and also if you've been proactive and ask for the feedback, you actually can like improve on what they say and say, okay, next time we'll probably throw out more like data science term there if they want me to be more technical. So use it as an opportunity to improve and to learn. Even if you move to the next round, like really often people are so excited, they're like, yeah, I got another interview. Still ask for the feedback, because recruiters see all the notes, from interviewer, and they always write like notes about what they like, what they didn't like. So there are like, when I fill out that scorecard, like there are usually 4 responses. I can say yes, no, or I can say strong no, strong yes. So for instance, if I say yes and you move forward, but I may still say like, hey, I like Amy, she's been great, but I would like to hear more about like the business intuition, like about the company. And then if she follows up with a recruiter, they may say, well, we really like you, but keep in mind that like we expect like a little bit more talking about business and not just about data. You will know that, so next time you come to the interview, because that's our concern right now as a company with you, that you're not like business savvy enough, you will kind of like talk about the business, so now we know that everything is great, so we'll like cover it. So yeah, make sure you ask for feedback and never believe when they tell you just, oh, like everything's great, you just don't have enough experience. That's such a bullshit, you know. If they already talked to you, if they invited you, right, and it's never the case that they reject you because you didn't have enough experience. This is just for them not to get in trouble, right? Because everything else is subjective. If they say, well, you don't have enough business intuition, like, I do have business intuition, like, you want to challenge me? So that's why, you know, this is really like generic way to say no. The actual reason's never like that. If they don't want to tell you the actual reason, that's fine. But I've been working with people who would come to me and saying, you know, Olga, like I've been in this like 5 final rounds, I got rejected. And you know, every time they told me I don't have enough experience, I was like, man, it's definitely not the case, okay? Whatever it is, so we would do mock interviews and I would kind of guess what this person was liking, but it's never because you don't have enough experience. You know, dig deeper, right? If they tell you that, like don't buy that, it's definitely not the case. Okay, I want to talk really quickly about getting an offer. I know you guys not there yet. Yeah, go ahead.
If they give you that feedback, should you like push further, like, oh, but other than that, should you respond to get more from them, or should you just go?
I would say it really depends. Like usually, as I said from my experience, they were willing to give me that feedback when I established some good relationship with recruiters. You know, they kind of like just, because they don't have to, and it's their time, but they may just, oh, she's nice, like let me like help her out. I would say don't push, just get as much as you can. Like you might like ask for clarification, right? Like, oh, what does it mean? Like, do you know what does it mean more like business intuition, right? But use it more as a learning opportunity, not like a reason to fight with them, right?
No. What I mean by push is like ask further, like if they tell you like you don't have enough experience, like.
Oh,
like,
that's a great point. I think most likely they will not say, but it never hurts to ask. Like every time like someone would get like that response, I would like still like suggest reaching out to a recruiter and asking them get on the phone and just like collaborating a little bit more. And then it depends. Yeah. So keep in mind like recruiter your best friend, and actually, you know, it's a really hard job. You know, many people feel like treat recruiters not like nice, feel like, oh, they're not getting back to me soon enough. And yeah, sometimes they're dangerous, but they deal with a lot of candidates. But like you want to make friends with them, you want to be friends. Like first of all, they can give you great feedback moving forward. Second, like they will advocate for you if you like want to negotiate. Like I had this recruiter at Uber and like they canceled my offer because of the visa, but they gave me an offer and we almost like became friends. You know, it was back in time when all interviews were in person, so I would come to the office, we would like have coffee with her, chat, and she was an amazing human being. And you know, she would tell me like, oh, this person said this, that person said that. She sent me all this like list of topics before the interviews. And then when she gave me an offer, I was like, well, I want to have more. She's like, well, it's really hard to like get the compensation, the base level, but I will see what I can do. And she brought out the really high sign-on bonus for me. You know, she was just being really nice. And then when they canceled the offer, she was like really crying when she had to tell me that. I'm like, it's fine, I will be fine. You know, and she was like, no, I'm so sorry. You know, they really care, they really want you, and they want you to have a great experience. So treat them nice, like thank them for everything they tell you, for all the like help they provide you. And also like that may come really handy once you start negotiating, right? If you have a good relationship with your recruiter, you're like, hey, like, you know, like, because they know, like right now I think it's easier because the company, they pose this like range, right, for wages. Back when I was like searching for a job, it wasn't the case. So you kind of had to like guess, right, how much they pay. But even right now, sometimes this range is really like wide, right? It's like from 100 to 200, right? And really often people kind of anchor themselves in the middle. But companies actually anchor themselves at the like lower level, like the left, like they will be like, no, it's 100, and you're like, well, it's like between 100 and 200, right? They're like, well, 100 is between 100 and 200. So yeah, and that's where recruiter can help you. They can give you an idea of what like the actual range that they're considering. Okay, yeah. So what you shouldn't do, please don't drop other interviews if you got an offer. I've seen that a lot, and sometimes I was able to convince people keep interviewing, sometimes not. I know it's like exhausting. I know it's like, once you got an offer, you just want to, okay, I'm done. I just want to party and I want to accept that offer. That's great, but it can wait for a couple more weeks, right? Like no one's going to wait for like too long. But it's totally fine to say, hey, I really appreciate your offer. I want to work with your company, but I have this other interview processes. I just, for myself, for my own like sake, I just want to complete that and finish and see where I get. They will always wait. If it's a decent company, no one's going to press you, say like, no, you should say like tomorrow. And if they do, then that's like the sign how they're going to treat you on the job, right? So that's also informative for you. So please don't drop out into your process once you got the first offer. Again, the ideal is having 2-3 offers. And also, once you got your first offer, make sure to tell other companies saying like, hey, can you facilitate the process? I have this offer right now. They will treat you really differently because now they see, okay, other companies competing, she's actually legit, like someone wants to hire her, so let's like speed up. So, and they will treat you, like, I really noticed it. Once I got my first offer, before everyone was like, but you have no experience in the United States, you're like from academia, blah, 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 and you like, always feel like you need to prove yourself. And I'm like, IBM wants to hire me. And they're like, oh my God, we need to talk to you. Like, it was just like really different, like, way how they treat you, how quickly they respond. So just make sure to take advantage of that and like let other companies know. And like, remember in the beginning we talked about different criteria, like, oh, I want the compensation, like, the industry, culture. It also helps if you assign weights to this criteria. Like imagine you have like $100 and you need to divide between. So for instance, I will give like 40 to compensation, 40 to culture, and like 20 to industry. And then I have multiple offers, like which one is better? And then I will just, okay, this offer is really good in compensation, this weight like 0.4, and I assign like 10, so that's going to get like 4 as a score. And this like, the culture, again, will be like this, and the whatever else like industry is going to be again like that. So just use your weights so that like you can basically multiply by the weights, like how you rank different criteria, and that will help you like just get the final score when you need to choose. Because sometimes it's really hard. Man, like this company is like so great. That's like really was my case. The company is great, but they don't pay that much. They're mission driven, which means when company says mission driven, don't expect high wage, right? That's another way to say we don't pay much. Like, yeah, you should enjoy it, like just like for what you're doing. But in other company, they may have like really good pay, but that nothing to do with like what you want to do, right? So then just like which one I choose. It really helps just to formalize it. Okay, so don't share your wage expectations too early. Like this is one thing you shouldn't do. So I think right now it happens less again because companies they already have the like wage range in the job posting. But if like recruiter asks you really early what's your wage expectation, say that like you want to go through the entire process, you want to see what the role is, you want to see the entire package because really often there are stock options, bonuses. Basically, don't give your number. Whoever gives a number first loses. You don't want to be the one who's going to give you a number. And especially early in the process, you're probably going to downpay yourself and give lower numbers than you would want. And then it will be really hard to move away from that. Because in the beginning, you're so happy they've been talking to you. You're like, oh, everything will be great. Like 100 will be amazing. And then like you realize that, well, you could have asked 120, but then they were like, oh, we have a file for you 100, so that's what we're going to give you. And you're like, oh, why did I say this? Right? So don't say that. That's what people like, where people like fail when they share the expectations too early. Please negotiate. Like I feel so bad that I didn't do it myself, and especially I know females have troubles. Like nothing bad is going to happen. Worst case scenario, they will say no. Really often they will increase a little bit. But it still like helps, it's still nice even if like just like 5 more K, or if they give you sign-on bonus, or maybe they give you a little bit more stock options, right? You will just feel better because then every year, your wage is going to increase probably as a percentage of your previous wage. So it's kind of like cumulative interest rate, right? Like even a little bit in the beginning will give you a lot at the end. So this extra like 10K as your first wage may actually bring you like extra like 100K like 10 years later, right? Because your wage will be increased by like 5%, 3%, like 7%, and the base level will be higher. So keep that in mind. Yeah, and if they ask you, like what's other companies you're talking to, what their offers, I would keep it vague, like don't give too much information, like let them guess it because they may know other recruiters from this company, so they may, if you say, well, I'm actually talking to like Netflix and Amazon, they know exactly how much they pay for this role, so don't like limit yourself, just say, I'm talking to like big tech companies that's like really good in like what they do. And then they don't know which company it is, and they're like, well, maybe it's like these other companies like that pay even more, so they don't know. So reveal their information if you already have like offers, if you're talking to other companies, but I suggest not to give them too much like specific details because it's not like your fear. Okay, so we're done with like interviewing and offers and like all this stuff, but now comes visas. I know it's not relevant for everyone, but I think there are some aspects that's still relevant for like just in your job search that like really help when you're like an international person, but it still wouldn't hurt even if you don't need visa support. So the first thing, I think it's a lot about mindset, right? I know you feel like if you need visa support, it's like much harder for you, right? And a lot of people feel like, man, like how are you even going to get like an offer? The market is so competitive and I need this visa support. Well, first of all, if you start your job search, you really need to adopt like you can do it mentality, right? Other people got it. So the market is not at its worst for sure. It's actually pretty good right now, right? Maybe not the best, but it's like, it's a pretty stable, solid market right now this year. You never know how it's going to be like a year from now, but you guys like, when you finish your program, it's okay out there. So you definitely can do it, visa or not, right? Just start with like, I will do what it takes because I need a job, right? You're here, you need a job, so like you're studying so hard, so that's why like you wanted to PO. So that's definitely not going to be like a blocker for you to gain an offer. And please drop like the mentality that I heard so many times, like, well, life isn't fair, like why these Americans, they they're born in this country and I like had to like work my like ass off, just like to be here. Like I hear you, I'm like from Ukraine, I moved to Russia first and to the United States. Like life isn't fair, it's like, I'm a perfect representation. Like, yeah, life is not fair, I'm from Ukraine, right? But also if I would just like always like thinking like, oh my God, how hard it is, it's basically where your energy goes, where your attention is. If your attention is about like complaining all the time, that's where your energy is going to be. If your like, attention is like, yeah, I have this like restriction, I need visa, so I need to be better candidate. What can I do to be better candidate? That's where your energy will go, okay? So you should have like 3 years of OPT. That's like a lot. You will have 3 attempts to get H-1B, maybe even 4 if they apply like before April, if it happens to be the case. But even 3, statistically, you're gonna get your H-1B, like really likely, unless you're a person who like never wins a lottery or something. But there's still other options as well, right? So most likely things will be fine. Just like keep in mind that you need to be a little bit better than average candidates. So for the company, so that it's worse for them to like go through all the visa hassle. But even if you don't need visa support and you really want to be in a company that you feel like is stretch, again, adopt the same mentality, right? What can I do to stand out, right? So we just like think about like what's different about you, how I can show my passion, my potential. Because let's be fair, like most of the companies will be hiring you for potential. That not that much what you can bring right now, but like what you can bring once you're there and learn really quickly. So as long as you can demonstrate that, you will be fine. Yeah, so like I mentioned, think about that all the time, international or not. You go through the interviews, you do take home challenges, you talk to hiring manager, think like, how can I stand out? How I can be better than other candidates? But it's especially true for international people, right? If there is another person who doesn't need visa support, what is it about me that they should hire me, despite that like hustle? It's better to be upfront about the visa requirements. I always ask like if they do H-1B. I always ask if green card like support is available. Many companies will tell you like you need to work for at least like 1 year or some amount of time with them. But it's good to know if in general they do green cards or not, because eventually that's what, if your goal is to stay in the United States, that's what you want to get, right? Because work visa still has limitations and it will expire at some point. So ask in advance if green card is an option. For instance, a company says no, especially if it's a small company. I would say it's still worth asking like hiring manager or recruiter, like why no? Because the reasons may be really trivial and you can actually work with it. So for instance, they may say, well, we don't have a lawyer. Like in my previous company, like all people who work there, they were Americans. And I was like the only international person. And they're like, well, we just don't have a lawyer in here. And I'm like, great, I can bring you one. I just found a lawyer myself and really connected them. That's it. That's how simple it was to solve the issue. But they didn't have a lawyer. They were like startups, a bunch of kids like running around. So, I had to I can take care of this, don't worry, right? So bring this attitude, I'm not going to create you problems, right? You can hire a lawyer, they will connect with the company, say I will bring you the lawyers, everything's fine. Another reason they may bring up and say well, we don't want to pay to lawyers, right? Especially if unlimited budget. I don't know what it is right now. Back when I was applying for H-1B, it was about $7,000, paying for lawyers for that. I think green card is higher than that, but still it's doable. If you guys are going to make over 100K, you can afford it yourself. And it's actually worth it, kind of paying out of your own pocket. So legally it's not allowed that you pay for the lawyer. But what you can do is you can say, hey, I talked to the lawyer, H-1B for 7K, you guys offering me 110. How about you pay me 1.3, right? And the 7 goes to the lawyer. For company, it really doesn't matter, but you solve the issue. They hire you for the same money, and you also will get visa support. Okay, so just be entrepreneurial, be proactive. It's probably not going to work with larger companies, they have some restriction, but with smaller mid company, especially if they like you, especially if there's something about you that really resonates with them, try to work it through. Right? They don't have a lawyer, you can bring one. They don't have money, they can take it out of your wage. Okay? So definitely have that in mind. Okay, so now it's time for the question. I think we're good on time, so maybe 10-15 minutes, right? Yeah, anything about go ahead.
You mentioned not disclosing their expected pay range in the beginning.
Say it again, please.
You mentioned not disclosing a pay that you expect. There's some job applications where it's a field that you have to enter to apply. What would you do in that?
Yeah, I would give a high range, right? So for instance, I'm applying and I'm aiming for 120, and I would say 120 to 140, right? So that your lower number is what you actually want, but you give yourself room to get more.
My question actually builds off of that question, which is, what if you enter higher than they reject you because it's too high and they don't want to pay that much?
Well, the question is how much you want to work for. I don't think they're going to reject you. So you're probably not going to put too much, twice as much as you want. Right? But you need to do your research, right? Based on your experience, based on what jobs you're applying to. There are tons of places to look it up. You will see the wage range. What companies have, usually they have we pay 70th percentile, for instance, or 80th percentile, which means they take the wage distribution for everyone who's a title data scientist with that many years of experience, and then they're okay, where is the 70th percentile? We're not going to pay Google, we're not going to pay Meta, but we're going to pay top 30 of the companies. Right, so, and this information is usually openly available on their website, so I literally saw that, 70th, 80th percentile. So you can do that math and kind of guess where they put the wage in there, and yeah, kind of
Many times in LinkedIn, they ask when you apply to jobs, they ask you about your visa status right away in a short questionnaire. Since we don't have an immediate need of a visa because we have the OPT, should we respond no and then bring up the H-1B afterwards, or how we should go about that questionnaire?
Well, technically, you do want H-1B right away. You do want them to apply for H-1B right away because that's a lottery. And to have more attempts, you want to get hired, and like from the first year, like let them apply. The thing is also, I don't know if you guys knew that about H-1B, but you don't have to be in the company so that they apply. So for instance, if you accept offer like in March and the application is on April 1st, they can apply for H-1B even if you start like in June. So I would answer yes, because you want to have H-1B. Like I had 3, so the first time I didn't get it, and it was exactly like that. They applied for me early, so it was end of my PhD year, but they already applied. I didn't get it. The second time, 2 companies applied for me, like Uber and eBay, and I got it from one of them. So basically, I had 3 attempts. I got only 1, success. So yeah, even if you don't need it right now, it's still in your best interest so that I apply right now.
In the beginning of the presentation, you were saying that even before starting to apply, we should ask ourselves which companies we want, what type of jobs we expect, etc. But with the current tech context, do you really think we can afford filtering that much?
I think you can, yeah. It's like why I mentioned the tiers, right? Like knowing what you want, it doesn't mean, and I work with people like that, and they were real assholes, like really hard to work with. So I really want this like 4 companies, right? And they were so stubborn. I don't suggest this approach. Yeah, given the current market, the timing, right? You'd rather get something like moving rather than just like not having a job for like a year. But it's good to have priorities. So that's why I said about this criteria, right? So that this is my top. This is where I spend a lot of effort. It's where I'm going to supplement with cold emails, try to connect with someone from a company, really do my best. This is the type of companies that I'm fine working with, maybe not as happy. Still apply, right? But you will know like how to basically, divide your time and energy when it comes to application and interviewing process. Yeah, but definitely don't give up too soon. Because many people, it's another extreme, so some people were so self-confident and so not great that they have to, by lower expectations, you're not going to get there right now. But some people actually, they were so shy and so not confident in themselves. They're like, oh, my dream job is Google, but I really I think I will never get it. I'm not going to apply. It's just so scary and stuff. Don't do that as well, right? If you want something, why not to try? What the worst that can happen? Just don't apply as your first batch, as I suggested, have some practice before, but definitely don't limit yourself, because there will be so many people who will want to limit you, so many just life events and stuff that will be limiting. It shouldn't be you who just filtering yourself saying no, we are not good enough. If I were telling it to myself, we wouldn't be talking right now, right? So it just go for what you want and let them decide if you're good enough or not. Because I think you guys studying, and you may have expectations, especially if you had degrees before and with universities, you may have expectations that everyone is so smart, they're smarter than me. People are really dumb, even the ones who go for data science, so many of them really, really dumb, they may know how to code, but they have no idea what they're doing. So just don't think that there are a lot of data scientists out there, they're all rich. Right, I'm pretty sure at least half of them just don't even count. So you have something to offer, just come with that mindset and perspective, right? I know what I'm doing. Yeah, I have a lot to learn, but I want to allow myself to apply where I want to be. Yep.
I have a question basically about this exact point.
Mm-hmm.
Of once you create that tier list of companies you really like, you're happy with. I know you talked about try applying in batches and see if this resume style is working, this application, then go through one.
Yeah.
But how, I guess, I'm trying to think of how I'm trying to word this, but how do you know when you're ready, I guess, really go into the ones you want? And I guess also what are some of the, you talk about there are some consequences of if you apply for tier 2 or the and you don't get the role, it's kind of hard to apply again. I just wondering if you could talk about why it's going to be
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Yeah, so basically you're ready for tier one if you have like at least couple interviews with tier two. Another mistake that people do is that they get stuck with tier two and they keep interviewing. So I had like clients like that, and then I'm like I remember a girl, she had like all this like five pipelines with different companies, and then she's like, I don't want to work with any of these companies. I'm like, why the hell are you talking to all of them? It's totally fine having one company. It's kind of your practice company. 2 max. You shouldn't have more than that, right? Like once